Hey, I'm Paul. Thanks for joining me. I'm a psychologist and coach and the founder of Wise Amigo. In this playlist, I've put together 3 ideas to help see you through tough moments or bounce back from a setback. It's fair to say people's resilience has been pretty tested in recent years. Life's been really hard and still is. It can be difficult to take a step back and to see things for what they are, clearly and logically. And that's especially true in the heat of a really difficult moment or right after a disappointment. Certain challenges might trigger certain emotions in us, which makes it harder to disentangle ourselves from the enormity of a difficulty and to think really objectively about how to deal with it. So we can overthink situations, agonise over them, get quite down and eat ourselves up. But there are certainly things that we can try to get back up and go again. There are techniques that we can employ that over time help us to build resilience. So here's 3 ideas. Number 1, tune into how you think about these challenges. We're all primed to look for threats around us. We're evolved to do so. It's what kept us alive hundreds of thousands of years ago, and it's what makes us vigilant today. Now, of course, the threats today are very different, but how we tune into these threats hasn't changed that much. Nowadays, the fact that we do perceive threats is first and foremost quite a useful thing. It leads us to ask questions about ourselves, and this helps us to stay on our toes. So questions like, what do other people think of me? What does my boss think of me? Am I doing a good job? Am I really doing enough? These are useful prompts that help us to think critically, and this all harks back to us being primed to think about our survival. If you didn't react to threats or experience some anxiety about them, it would probably indicate a broader problem. So it's a very normal process. But our focus on threats means that we can more easily default to negative thoughts, feelings and emotions. Negative thoughts about our abilities, our careers, our reputation, our worth. Negative thoughts about the wider world around us. And if unchecked, these can go on to influence our behaviour and then what likely happens to us as a result. And with so much information to process nowadays, the probability of seeing threats all around us increases, and so the number of thoughts, feelings and emotions increases too. But the good news is that our thoughts don't have to determine our behaviour. We don't have to be consumed by looking at the threats around us. Learning to recognise that we are separate from our thoughts is a really important skill. It sounds really easy too, but it isn't. But this skill underpins many coaching and therapeutic approaches, such as cognitive behavioural therapy. One way to do this is to adopt the mindset of an observer capable of carefully noticing our thoughts and feelings as they happen, as they enter our consciousness, simply recognising them, but crucially, without being influenced or affected by them. This is similar to the way a scientist might study something. The scientist isn't affecting or being affected by what they're seeing. They're just observing things. Or using a different analogy, take pop-up ads on your phone or your laptop. They pop up, you notice them of course, but the trick is, what we all do is just not to click them, not to be affected by them. You find a little X in the corner and they're gone. Techniques like mindfulness, focusing your attention on what you're paying attention to, can be really helpful to build this skill as an observer. Mindfulness or anchoring exercises can help you to recognise but also be at peace with all the noises and distractions around you, and that includes your thoughts and feelings. And it's quite easy to engage with this. You can try to be mindful when doing something really trivial, like if you're having a shower, listening to the water hit the back of your head while tuning out from everything else. Of course, you can try something more elaborate, like a proper guided meditation. The point is to focus intently on being aware and present in the moment, and that includes understanding how your thoughts come and go without you having to act on them or be influenced by them. When you build your ability to recognise your thoughts and separate yourself from them, you'd also do well to label them, and this helps in a number of ways. So it helps to make emotions feel less intense by simply calming parts of the brain, like the amygdala, which is responsible for processing emotions such as fear. Labelling has the effect of turning a hot, attention-grabbing thought into something much more tangible and easily understood, processing it in a way that it can be held and put down to one side without letting it jump all over the place and causing chaos for us. It's also useful when those very same unhelpful thoughts rear their ugly head again and again, which they inevitably will. How refreshing it can be to break the chain of repeated unwelcome thoughts with a simple, here we go again, I'm having that thought that I'm not good enough or something else. So try this tip. Try simply recognising your thoughts, either in the run-up to a situation that you're dreading or in the aftermath of a difficult event. Practice simply recognising them and labelling them to create some distance from the thoughts. Now that you're focused on thinking about how you think, we move to the second tip, which is all about reframing them. Tip number 2 in the playlist is all about reframing how we think about certain challenges. At some point or another, we're all prone to seeing certain situations through a negative lens. That feeling of dread about an important presentation, I can't wait for this to be over, I just know this isn't going to go well. Or in the past, that sense of having messed up. I can't believe I said that. Why didn't I say something else? I'm so stupid. And I'm sure you've been in a situation where one or two thoughts quickly turn into a difficult loop of negative thoughts that can be really difficult to break. How often have a few minutes gone by and you've realised that you've been completely overtaken by a range of upsetting thoughts? Well, reframing is about visualising future or past challenges through different lenses. It's about seeing situations in more constructive, more positive, and simply more helpful ways. One aspect of reframing is called cognitive reappraisal, where you actually look to re-engineer the thoughts that you're having. It's about turning, that was a disaster, into, well, it's not really that bad, I've been through worse. It's like turning, where on earth do I start with this, to, okay, let's just break it down. Or catching yourself when you think, I'm out of my depth, and flipping this around to, well, I do know some things, I know my stuff, so I'm probably better equipped to deal with this than I realise. All easier said than done, of course. But remember, you've already done a lot of the hard work by simply recognising your thoughts and labelling your thoughts in tip 1. The next step is simply to try and turn a thought into something more helpful by flipping it around or turning it inside out. To think, well, what is the opposite of this negative thought? What's the more logical? What's the more rational? What's a more positive way to think about this? And the evidence suggests that reframing is a very useful way to negate stress and build resilience. You see, over time, reframing can help you to build optimism by broadening out your attention, finding new ways of looking at things. So the more you can train yourself to see challenges as opportunities or failures as learning, the more likely you are to build a positive frame of mind. All of this helps to ensure that when we look at stressful situations, you're more able to take a somewhat rational approach rather than react purely physiologically. Beyond reappraising some of your thoughts, there are other ways to retain a sense of perspective and better frame how you think strategically about issues. In anticipating situations, try to pinpoint what you may be able to control and be aware, of course, of what you can't control. Being clear where you have control and agency can and should be a huge factor in determining how you lean into difficult situations. It can also help rationalise past events. So say if you're given a presentation late in the day and people are getting tired, there isn't much you can do about that, so it's not worth worrying over. And when challenges are particularly difficult, remember that they're only temporary. They're isolated events, snapshots in time, and how you manage them in that moment doesn't define who you are. This process of isolating events is really key, as the more you can do this, the less you generalise across situations. And generalising is something which is to be avoided as it's associated with high levels of anxiety or depression. So we want to catch ourselves before we do that. It is essential too to try and put challenges into perspective and to think about your bigger picture and North Star. In the great journey of life, there will inevitably be wrong turns, lessons, bad luck. What is helpful is to explore how you process your experience, how you think critically about the challenges in those moments, and how this fits with your overarching aims, purpose, and your values. Now, an exploration of bigger aims, purpose, and values is for another video, but to have a sense of these, it can really help you reframe challenges and those setbacks. So if a situation didn't go your way, did you learn something that helps you actually get closer to the kind of person you want to be, or the kind of leader that you want to be? If you're dreading an important presentation, does the event itself provide you with a chance to show more of the real you? A chance to show others what you can do and therefore get closer to cementing the kind of reputation that you crave. If so, it's an opportunity. It's reframed. It's an opportunity to gain really valuable experience, a chance to take a much more optimistic viewpoint and one that is just simply much more helpful. Now, leaning into difficult challenges is in keeping with what one of my favourite theorists, the social psychologist Albert Bandura, said when he proposed his concept of self-efficacy, which is simply how do we go about building confidence and belief in our abilities. Now, he highlighted 4 ways to do this, but at the top of the list was a need to go and gain significant experiences that really test you. These testing situations are in effect the making of you. And there's also a lot of research that supports the need to do this to build tenacity, determination and willpower. In the true context of resilience, challenging situations are merely opportunities to come through them as a more strengthened, resourceful person. Tip number 3, know your active coping strategies. Now, when we have a setback, we make choices about how to cope with them. But we often do this automatically and unconsciously. Sometimes we want to pull the duvet over our heads and not face the world the next day. Other times we might try to numb the effects of a setback by, say, binging on snacks, junk food or drink. We've all been there. But just as we can also more consciously process and deal with our thoughts from tip 2, we can also choose more positive coping strategies. So what might this include? Well, first, turning to others. Simply talk through events or vent can help. At a basic level, this is simply about having someone else to ask for help. This might be fresh perspective, a sparring partner, just someone to listen. More broadly, this is about ensuring that you've got a decent support network around you, with people with different strengths, maybe role models who you can call on when in need. Another way to look at this is that it's actually counter to isolation. A strong social support network is associated with higher levels of resilience and lower levels of depression. Separately, you can benefit from disconnecting by relaxing or doing something entirely different. Just like the notion that our creativity is enhanced after a period of doing nothing, it can be good just to step away from things. But be mindful of how you choose to disconnect and be careful not to revert to the negative coping strategies like binging on food just to replace a negative feeling with a positive feeling. Why not try bringing in humour or doing something fun to lighten the moment? Making yourself laugh releases certain neurotransmitters like dopamine, oxytocin, which make you feel more satisfied, content and happy. Even smiling helps achieve the same. That's not to mention the positive effects as well of simply gaining a sense of perspective or a momentary distraction from a period of difficulty. The benefits of physical exercises are well documented, and there's many positive direct effects but also indirect benefits linked to some of the strategies I've already mentioned. So say exercise provides a chance to disconnect or compartmentalise your thoughts, or maybe connect with others in a team sport. But with a more direct focus on the benefits of exercise, what it also does is help us to release chemicals in the brain that can improve our mood, like endorphins. Mental well-being exercises like mindfulness or simple breathing exercises also deliver dual benefits. On the one hand, they help us build more control over how we manage our thoughts, feelings or emotions by tuning into them. But at the same time, they allow us to better regulate our physiology by influencing and calming our brain's fear centre when we sense threats. Not surprisingly, taking the time to properly problem solve or find helpful information to deal with an issue is another active coping strategy. So this might include reframing from tip 2, prioritising or getting help from a sparring partner, but be mindful of choosing this approach right away or too routinely. It might actually be better to just step back, come out of a situation entirely before engaging with it again. And it's always important to choose how you vent to people, not just to vent, but to also engage in some kind of problem solving, so there's a purpose. Increasingly, good sleep habits and diet are getting the due consideration they should. Pulling all-nighters and living on coffee might seem heroic when you're up against it, but it's just not sustainable. Like exercise, building good sleep habits is akin to giving yourself the best possible chance that you'll be alert and ready to face the day. But similarly, there's a potentially vicious circle that develops from a lack of sleep. Poorer or disturbed sleep is actually associated with lower resilience, which in turn can increase the risk of poorer and poorer sleep. Take time to give yourself a break or to forgive yourself when things haven't gone well. You're not always going to get everything right and there's just too much to stay on top of. Go easy on yourself. Recognise the learning opportunity and then start again. This is the basis of self-compassion. Try gratitude. Remind yourself of what you can be thankful for. Studies have shown this increases life satisfaction, optimism, feelings of well-being, positivity and happiness. When readying yourself for a key challenge, which coping mechanism can you proactively put in place? And then if things don't go well, which ones can you draw on as soon as you start to have those negative thoughts? And remember, all things in moderation. Just like the quest to prevent ourselves from being held hostage by our negative thoughts, we should be mindful of relying on just one of these coping strategies. So there's usually a time limit on relaxing, disconnecting, and you don't want to overdo humour or it might not appear credible. But overall, these coping techniques should put you well on track to feeling better about situations that didn't go as you wanted, as well as helping you prepare to handle upcoming challenges. They should help you adapt and overcome adversity. Remember, resilience is a dynamic construct. It changes over time. It can go up and go down. But it's much better to build it proactively for the inevitable times when you need it than to wonder how to do this once you've been hit by a setback. Good luck.